One. And we're live on the Stables Network. Take it away.
All right.
You want
Play
the
that
truth,
bumper.
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth.
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, themichigansportstruthpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like the show's two Facebook pages, one at Michigan_Truth and the other created by the Stables Network. Go to the Stables Network's website, primetimewiththestablesnetwork.com, like the Stables Network on Facebook, and follow it on Twitter and Periscope at Stables Network and on Instagram at the Stables Network. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there.
I'm Taylor Phillips, along with Ed Smith. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with two L's. Ed Smith is alongside with me. Follow him on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. How are we doing this week?
Doing fine, Taylor. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Just not much ado about our social distancing and staying home order. But let's not delve too much into it. We got lots to talk about in terms of coronavirus sports news. We also got, more Dr. Robert Anderson stuff at U of M, plus lots of Lions to talk about, which has nothing to do with the coronavirus, although that's the main issue at hand. The show must go on. So here's what we know at the moment. Starting with the NFL, the league is right after our last episode, Fox Sports NFL insider Jay Glazer reported that Los Angeles Rams center Brian Allen tested positive for coronavirus, but was already symptom-free, so he recovered nicely. On Thursday, the day after, Denver Broncos star linebacker Von Miller tested positive. I think he recovered as well. And then the league is still planning to release its 2020 schedule by May 9th in full, which is a full season by means of that, with adjustments being discussed. No further details at that time. In the NHL last Thursday, Commissioner Gary Bettman was going to discuss COVID-19 testing with the Canadian government's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Last Saturday, NHLPA Executive Director Donald Fair says the players, and the leagues have not discussed specific locations to host games. 557 NHL players, nearly half the league's talent pool, hail from countries outside North America, according to Quant Hockey, which creates two issues. A, whether the players' respective countries will allow them to fly, and B, if the state and local governments of the selected North American city or cities will accept the risk of their cross-continent travels present. This past Monday now, Hall of Famer Wayne Gretzky believes the NHL season will be back either June, July, and August. Now, from what we've learned tonight, this just recently the NHL is targeting a June NHL draft and a July resumption of the 2019-2020 season. And also tonight, the league will not use non-NHL rinks as neutral sites. They plan to use 2 to 4 NHL rinks during the rest of the regular season, according to ESPN's Greg Wyszynski. So we're going to stop right there. We're going to pause right there. And Ed, I want your analogy on what happened in the NFL and the NBA, NFL and the NHL before we delve into the NBA and MLB news in terms of the coronavirus. Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of the NFL, there's obviously the NFL draft that is still expected to go on this week, obviously via virtual methods, of course. The NFL has the means, they have the technology, they have the resources to be able to do this. It is worth noting that apparently there are some local ties to this, as well as the director of IT for the Lions will in fact be, I kid you not, be in a Winnebago, either outside his home or outside or near Bob Quinn's home, and then we'll be in charge of making sure there's not any technical malfunctions or difficulties. He'll be basically the maintenance guy in charge that'll be overseeing how this will be streamed and carried out, and not just for the first round tomorrow night. We're talking all 3 nights, all 3 days. So quite uphill, quite a task for him. We'll see how he does. It is quite ironic or coincidentally funny that, yes, it would be someone from the Detroit Lions organization that has this specific job and title. But, that's one aspect of what's going on there. The NBA, from what I had heard, apparently, Bill Simmons might have made a mention as to how the NBA may bypass resuming the regular season and will probably start with the playoffs. There's no timetable when it will happen. There's not even any news about how seeding will be done, or with the teams that are in chasing those last couple of playoff spots, how they'll be affected or allocated, or how they'll set and sort that out. Bill Simmons mentioned the possibility of the top 2 seeds, the top seed from each conference getting a first round bye. That way you have the other, teams that's battling for the last spots play it out like some sort of wild card round or whatever. There's that aspect as well. So Commissioner Silver is obviously has his hands full, hands tied, I should say, what to do in terms of making sure that not only players and the teams that are eligible are symptom free, but also, if you're talking about restarting the league, or so to speak, how do you do this by making sure that the teams and the players don't get sick again, especially in light of all, this controversy and efforts and debate about whether or not the country or states should reopen, putting other people at risk or not. So that's a very tricky balancing act that Commissioner Silver is going to have to deal with. But that is how, the NFL and the NBA have been moving forward in terms of this week in deals, in terms of dealing with moving their league calendar and restarting their respective leagues around COVID-19.
Yeah, that's true. It's still those numbers just keep piling up, and while they do the testings, the cases, the deaths around the U.S., that's why the leagues have to take extra caution. The NFL and the NHL, same with the NBA and MLB. Here's what we know here. Last Friday, the league stuck with the one and done rule as discussion stalled over one key issue, which was the fact that allowing players to enter the NBA draft straight out of high school was eliminated in 2006. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski said on his Woj quote, "A lot of us believed a year ago or 18 months ago that the NBA and the Players Association would come to an agreement on ending the one and done. They would set a date in the future, but we thought it would be by 2022 or 2023 when high school players would be able to go back in the draft. That has not happened. It is not on the horizon, largely because the union and the league is part of letting the high school players back into the draft. The league has wanted players to have to make available their physicals and medical evaluations to all teams. The union, backed very hard by the agents, had said, end quote, that's not something we're going to give in on. We're not going to give you full access medically. That's the one advantage that we feel we have as agents and players to control the process, out quote. That's been the major sticking point for a couple of years now, and there's a real strong possibility that the one and done conversation isn't picked up again until the next collective bargaining agreement in 2025, unquote. Further developing info to come later at some point. Commissioner Adam Silver said the NBA will have to consider delaying the start of the 2020-2021 season, but may finish the 2019-2020 season, except safety is the priority, as we all know it. The league and players agreed on a deal also to withhold 25% of each player paycheck, and Knicks owner James Dolan, who tested positive a while ago, has recently recovered, so that's good news. In Major League Baseball, MLB teams can furlough the staff on May 1st. That means Commissioner Rob Manfred is reportedly enabling teams to reduce pay for non-playing employees. According to CBS Sports League, the league has discussed dividing teams into Florida, Arizona, or Texas to use local facilities for the 2020 season. Fans have filed a lawsuit in California on behalf of fans who purchased tickets for games that haven't been played due to the pandemic. And Baseball America reported that minor league baseball reportedly will accept an MLB proposal that could cut more than 40 minor league teams. 40 are expected to be cut. Also taken into consideration prior to this episode, MLB is probably going to just stick with Arizona with the spring training ballparks with no fans. So this, from what we know, all teams will have to travel to just Arizona. So Ed, fill us in on the NBA and Major League Baseball. Ed?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Ed, I gave out the reports of the NBA and Major League Baseball. Your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I understand what MLB is trying to do. They're in a bit of a pickle themselves because they didn't even get a chance to start the season, let alone finish it out. Because it's weird because as we've seen in terms of the days that have passed, this week would have marked the beginning of the NBA playoffs as well as the ending of the first full month of the Major League Baseball season. So a lot of timing, a lot of algorithm and coordination has been thrown off as a result of this pandemic that's been going on as well. So I do foresee not just temporary changes, but also permanent changes to the schedule as a result, not just in one league, but in multiple leagues as well. Like I can definitely see a scenario of where the NBA, if they want to try and salvage and start the 2021 season on time, they may just start it on Christmas Day, as it was hinted at or reported at on this show before. So that could be one aspect as well. In terms of the NFL, apparently the president was mentioning about having hopes of wanting to start the NFL season on time in September. We'll see how that goes. Even if, like I said, more of the stay-at-home restrictions are lifted by then, I would hope and presume that safety measures and acts would be bestowed upon and be in place so that just in case there is a more lenience on mass gatherings, that, hey, these are the guidelines you have to follow and must follow if you want to come out and see this game, i.e. masks, gloves, protection, all that sort of thing, sanitization. As opposed to that, there's you're not just seeing furloughed and staff being furloughed and laid off. It's not just having its effect in MLB and NBA, but it's also making its crossover effect. If it's what we've seen in the past week with regards to WWE, more roster cuts, more people being released from their roster. You're not just seeing it in WWE. You're probably seeing it in other promotions too. But it's just more prominent because of what the recognition that WWE brings as to why it's making this sort of attention. As for the UFC, they are still wanting to plan on carrying on with the fight card on May 9th. A location is still not yet to be announced officially yet. But if you see more and more states start to reopen in the next few coming days and weeks, it may give an indication as to whether or not UFC will have a location at least to hold their next event, if not next couple of events. It is worth noting that UFC bantamweight and featherweight champion Amanda Nunes will not be fighting on that card on May 9th against Felicia Spencer due to concerns regarding the coronavirus and also dealing with a nagging injury. And, and for a side note, she along with her girlfriend or fiance, Nina Ansaroff, they're in the middle of expecting their first child together. So that's a lot of issues and potential distractions going on at the same time for the champion. So that's one aspect as to why she may be wanting to wait a little bit longer before fighting again. As for the rest of the card that I mentioned last week, all of that appears to be intact for now. And in terms of the card or the fights that were supposed to happen last Saturday, which was the once scheduled UFC 249, now basically labeled UFC Fight Island. That was going to be taking place at a casino resort of some kind in California. Dana White has saying that is still going to go on, but the time and date is unknown at this time.
All right. So Ed Smith will keep you guys posted on the UFC and its coronavirus crisis situation. Thanks very much for that. In terms of tennis, according to the Associated Press, Serena Williams' coach will begin a league at his training academy that allows professionals to play without fans amid COVID-19. So there's that, and that's pretty much all we have.
There was also a brief bit of news, if you want to call it controversial or not, apparently, because obviously in terms of dealing with a disease on a scale such as this, vaccines are the topic of discussion. It was very interesting to note that world-renowned tennis player Novak Djokovic apparently recently revealed that he is on the side of his stance regarding vaccination is more on the anti-stance. When you think of anti-vaccination, people that advocate for that, you think of Jenny McCarthy, for instance. Well, Djokovic is among that group. It is a very interesting position to take, concerning, especially knowing the fact that people do feel that having a vaccine in place to combat an illness and disease such as this is vital and necessary to not only not only saving more lives, but also helping eventually restart the country more fully. It's not going to be what it was pre-outbreak, but at least to some semblance of normal. So it's a very interesting point of view to have, and it's an interesting position to advocate for. Myself personally, I may differ, but hey, that's their opinion. They have a right to it, and we'll see where it goes from that aspect. Especially if you're being told that, hey, whether or not we resume this sport or your profession based upon whether or not we get this vaccine that you may or may not believe in. It's a very intriguing scenario to be not just on the side of, but also to be in if you're, say, Novak Djokovic.
Yep, and that's in terms of the vaccines, and you mentioned it too. That's good that they're being mentioned. I believe that there's hope that's looming early on, not only with the car washes, but in terms of tennis as well. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all the coronavirus sports news that we have to spread around on our show. So turning to Michigan Wolverines football, running back True Wilson has transferred to the University of Northern Colorado to play his final season of eligibility with the Bears in the Big Sky Conference, and is eligible to play immediately. So there's that. So, yeah. So the Wolverines football team loses another player to the transfer portal, and he already signed up to play for Northern Colorado, the Bears.
Probably meant more playing time, more minutes as well.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, he didn't get much playing time with Michigan. So that's not too big of a loss then. That being said, on to the Dr. Robert Anderson case, or the continuation thereof. According to David Jesse from the Detroit Free Press, and Ed, you're going to have to bear with me on this one. Its headlines: Michigan's Ward Manual mishandled the Dr. Robert Anderson complaint by sending it to lawyers. University of Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel did not follow university policy when he forwarded a letter alleging sexual assault by a former football team doctor to the university's lawyer instead of the school's Title IX investigators, because lawyers got to see the letter before any investigator. They got an early warning of potential liability to the school. There are about 40 lawsuits pending in federal court against U of M alleging the university covered up Robert Anderson's sexual assaults of students, athletes for decades, including male students, for goodness sake. That's still disturbing. There could be many lawsuits, many more lawsuits, that is, to come. At least 3 other prominent lawyers have said they each have dozens of potential victims, none of whom have filed suit yet. But one of those tight ends have revealed his abuse experience with Dr. Robert Anderson. And while I read that, you might want to look that one up. That was from ESPN recently, just today, earlier, like a few hours ago. The University of Michigan not following, and I quote, the University of Michigan not following their own policies indicates they were covering something up, unquote, said Parker Stenar, the attorney for the man who sent the letter. And it continues on, and I quote, certainly it shows they wanted to approach the Anderson case differently than other cases. The letter was not the first time the current administration had been warned about Anderson. They were warned during the Nassar case, after the Nassar case, and during the Ohio State cases. Yikes. They understood the magnitude of the financial liability they could face, unquote. Recent history says any settlement with Anderson's victims could get pricey. Michigan State University paid $500 million to Larry Nassar survivors. The University of Southern California paid $215 million to George Tyndall survivors, and Penn State University paid $109 million to Jerry Sandusky survivors. Ohio State University recently reached settlement terms with about half of the Richard Strauss survivors, but terms were not released. Nassar, Tyndall, Strauss, and Anderson were all doctors who were accused of sexually assaulting students, including athletes, especially including athletes, may I add. U of M would not comment on Manuel's actions or lack of responsibility, may I add. Spokesman Rick Fitzgerald said the letter containing allegations against Anderson was sent from the university's lawyers to its investigative office the same day it was received, and even some plaintiffs' lawyers acknowledged that may have ameliorated the issue. Still, experts say the handling of the complaint may go to institutional resistance that persists at universities despite a number of high-profile cases that have been mishandled in recent years. On July 18, 2018, Manuel's mail contained a bombshell of a letter. In it, a former U of M wrestler named Tad DeLuca detailed how he was sexually assaulted by a former U of M doctor named Robert Anderson. Anderson was the head of student health services when DeLuca was in school and a team doctor for the football squad. Anderson had worked with then athletic director Don Canham, Canham, to make sure all athletes were getting physicals from Anderson, specifically calling out the wrestling team as a group that needed to be ordered to do so. DeLuca's letter to Manuel detailed how he had written to his wrestling coach about the abuse in 1975 and was later forced off the team. Boom. The letter detailed how Anderson had assaulted him by inappropriately touching his nether regions and giving him an unnecessary rectal exam. Quote, I am fully aware that it was the 1970s and it was an entirely different world then, unquote. The letter to Manuel concludes, and I quote, I'm also aware that 40 plus years in it is an extremely long time ago, which doesn't matter. I expect nothing. I want nothing. I just feel the need to report this, unquote. Once he got the letter, Manuel's responsibility was to report it. He did, but not to the right people. Quote, Manuel then forwarded this letter to representatives at the University of Michigan General Counsel office, who forwarded the letter to the Office of Institutional Equity, unquote. A police report obtained by the Free Press under a Freedom of Information Act shows. The version told to police is different than the version told to DeLuca. On August 6th, Pamela Heatley, the Title IX investigator in the Office of Institutional Equity, emailed DeLuca, but left out any mention of the general counsel. Quote, Athletic Director Ward Manuel received your letter to him dated on July 18th of 2018, and he shared it with me since I am the university's Title IX coordinator, according to an email shared by Stinar of the Free Press. I hope you don't mind that I'm responding in his stead, but generally any concerns about sexual misconduct are shared with me so that I can respond and gather more information as appropriate, unquote. The U of M Police Department was then informed months later on October 3rd of 2018 and launched an investigation. The police told OIE, the Office of Institutional Equity, that is, to put a hold on the internal investigation until a criminal investigation was completed. No criminal charges were filed, at least yet, largely because Anderson died in 2008. Manuel's actions were not the correct procedure, according to U of M's policy. U of M's policy on where reports of sexual misconduct should go as simple and straightforward. Quote, responsible employees must immediately report any information they learned about suspected prohibited conduct to OIE or the Title IX coordinator. The policy says, failure by a responsible employee to timely report a suspect prohibited conduct may subject to them appropriate discipline up to and including removal from their position, quote, unquote. According to the policy, Manuel is a, quote, responsible employee, unquote. Well, Ed, we're going to pause right here and then continue on. Ward Manuel kind of showed responsibility, but he was a real idiot to give it to the wrong people.
Basically, he reacted fast. That's one thing you could say. But the thing is, the manner and how he reacted and who he reported it to does cast a big shadow and a big cloud of doubt of his credibility, the university's credibility, and makes things very fishy from a liability perspective. Why would you not let the Title IX investigators know, but you would only specifically let the university lawyers know? As if you're giving them the heads up. You are hedging your bets. You are basically, stacking the deck and interfering in this against the other side before the full investigation goes out. It should be noted, by the way, in the Freep article that, this isn't by the clients that are being represented by the law firm that is going through this legal action. You're saying that they're saying that they want to see the university prosper. This is nothing about trying to take the school down. This is trying to, expose obviously bad behavior, horrific behavior, behavior that Michigan should obviously not stand for and should have long disassociated with long time ago, but also use it as a measuring tool and as a lesson for what to learn and for what to do and what not to do, how to prevent something like this from happening again. But that was not a good look at all. I've often said that if a similar situation happened at Baylor or at Ohio State or at or Penn State or if you want to believe the allegations are MSU, or, say for instance you do, and if any of that happened here, I would be just as critical of my own guys as if I were on that side, as an outsider or not. So I'm holding my own word up here. And like I said, Moore Emanuel should not have done that. He should have exactly got it. Yeah, appreciate that you did it fast, but you should have done it the proper way, given it to the proper officials, the proper offices. Let them handle it. It's just a simple layup, and you blew it. So it's going to make you look bad. It's going to make the school look bad. And it's going to give the negative perception that people already have. It gives them some red meat to feast on and further drive up that narrative. So, Michigan has not handled this the right way at all so far. There is still time to make some semblance of a proper admittance of, hey, or acknowledgement of, hey, this was a messed up thing. We probably played a hand in enabling this and preserving and continuing this, because, like I said, between 1968 2003, when that's how long Dr. Anderson worked with the school, that's over 6,800 athletes, okay, almost 7,000 student athletes that he had to have seen or been in the care or attention of around that time. So trust and believe, more numbers and more names are going to come out here. Like you mentioned the ESPN article with the former player, Chuck Christian. If you guys get the time to read it, please check it out. Very detailed, very troubling, but also very informational as well, regards into how abuse can play on someone's mind psychologically, and their psyche and their spirit for a long, long, long time. It doesn't just go away just because the abuse itself stopped. There's a reason why it's called mental scarring or PTSD or that type of thing. When you get triggers or you're in situations that trigger those memories and those feelings and those sensations. So well-worthy article to check out. Please do so. But Michigan, again, they have not handled this the right way. They still have some semblance of time to, make a mea culpa, own up to their mistakes, and try to move forward with this, with the survivors, the victims, trying to build a better bridge with them going forward.
Yeah, and the university, from what I'm reading here in this article, did not answer those questions. As it says, let me see, where can I find it? There's no exception listed in the policy for an employee to report misconduct to the lawyers instead of the Title IX offices. The Free Press asked U of M if it was misinterpreting the policy or missing an exemption, and the university did not answer that question, instead saying the letter was passed on promptly to the OIE. Quote, the very day that Ward Manuel received it, he shared it with the Office of the General Counsel, and it was shared with the OIE, unquote. That was said by U of M spokesman Rick Fitzgerald to the Free Press. The fact that, quote, there was no delay whatsoever getting the letter to OIE is the most important point we want to make, unquote. An OIE and U of M police investigation was launched, and police investigators were able to identify additional former patients who believed they were subjected to sexual misconduct. The university has engaged the Wilmer Hale law firm to conduct an independent investigation regarding how this matter was handled, as we got about 22 minutes minus here on this episode. But that was a no-no right there. Just quickly hand that stuff to the OIE, but it's the university's job to answer that important question, and they didn't do that.
No, poor handling on their part. Absolutely.
Yeah, and just like Michigan State mishandled that their allegations or the investigation by ESPN's Outside the Lines and the police investigation, I think U of M should receive kind of about the same punishment MSU did.
They deserve scrutiny. They absolutely deserve scrutiny. And if more evidence like this pops up, they're going to have no choice if they face some type of disciplinary action.
Yeah, that's even true. But there is more to the article, but unfortunately, we don't have enough time because we got other things to run through. Speaking of college sports, college football has new rule changes. The 2-minute limit for instant replay, players being allowed to stay on the sidelines after getting ejected for targeting, a new clock administration rule regarding replays. If the game clock expires at the end of the half and replay determines that there was time remaining and the clock should start on the referee's signal after review, there must be at least 3 seconds remaining when the ball should have been declared dead to restore time on the clock. If less than 3 seconds remain on the clock, the half is over. Also limiting the number of players who can have the same number to 2. And finally, having officials on the field 90 minutes prior to kickoff instead of 60 to limit negative interactions between teams. Remember Michigan and Michigan State having their scuffles in East Lansing when Devin...
when Devin Bush basically went Rick James on the MSU logo on midfield.
Yeah, that was in 2018, wasn't it?
Yeah, it had to have been.
Yeah, Michigan won that game afterwards, 21-7. They went on to, I think, 10-2 again, or I'm not real sure, but anyway, they finished 10-2 in 2019.
It was in the middle of their fledgling but overall disappointing revenge tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. So let's get to some Lions real quickly. Sean Wagner-Mago of CBS Sports headlines, former Lions safety Glover Quinn blasts Matt Patricia for his attitude, his persona, and his arrogance. Glover Quinn, who was released by the Lions last offseason before he eventually retired in the summer, blasted Patricia for coming into Detroit and trying to change a culture that didn't need fixing. He said, quote, "I think he came in with a mentality of, I got to tear this whole thing down and rebuild it." Then you have players who had been there under Jim Caldwell, who had turned the organization around already. Because when I got there in 2013, quote unquote, it was not a good situation, not a good place to be, unquote. Quinn said all that to Sports Radio 610 in Houston. And then he continued, and I quote, "But over the years, 2014, 15, 16, 17, we were playing good ball and we were able to change the perception of Detroit Lions football," unquote. According to Quinn, the players never bought what Patricia was selling, partly due to Patricia's quote unquote arrogance. We were changing the perception for the Detroit Lions, and then all of a sudden Matt Patricia comes in and feels like, I got to change the whole culture, Quinn said, unquote. And quote, and we're like, you don't have to change the culture. The culture is good. They just maybe want you to get us over the hump, unquote. Coach Patricia came in and he tore it all down. And a lot of the guys didn't really want to buy into what he was teaching because of the way he presented it. His attitude, his persona, his arrogance, things like that made him people not really wanted to buy into it. And that was the disconnect, unquote. So, yeah, and then we have the other players being released, such as defensive tackle Damon Harrison. He too didn't seem to enjoy his time with the Lions, especially with Matt Patricia. And he recently said he was, quote, hell-bent on getting out, unquote, of Detroit, according to ESPN. So quite a few players that used to be on the Lions with Matt Patricia that were not happy with Matt Patricia as head coach. Matt Patricia, they seemed like Matt Patricia was mistreating them. And Matt Patricia, as much as Matt Patricia is trying to motivate the players, has he run his course? Has he gone too far on the players? Ed, I want your take on that.
I don't want to say he's run his course. The moment he's run his course is if you hear Stafford saying, "Okay, I don't like the guy." That's when you know it's over. I do think Patricia, when he first came on and tried to implement things, did go about it the wrong way. I think he should have worked more towards a better compromise with his players, with the players. Again, because remember, these were not his players at all. These were Jim Caldwell's players. He should have found a way to better establish that connection and say, okay, listen, I know things were a little bit different under Coach Caldwell. This is my tenure now, but let's try and work together. Let's see what we can build upon together. He did not do that. He was very forceful. And I can see where that can come off as arrogance. But if you're Matt Patricia, you're coming from a culture, I hate to sound like I'm being a Patricia defender or apologist, but I think from Patricia's perspective is that, hey, I'm coming over from a culture and a background to where winning is the norm, championships is the norm. And what he was around and what he dealt with during his tenure in New England, it wasn't just the winning, but how you handled yourself that led to it and because of it. And to say to go from here is a stark there to here is a stark contrast. So I think that was one reason, one aspect players were rubbed the wrong way when he began. But I still think at the end of the day, whether you like the coach or you're not, you shouldn't let your person, unless he really goes severely too far. Let's say, for instance, an extreme example, he goes Bob Knight on you or anything like that. Then, yeah, I can see why to say, you know what, I don't want to be here because of the coach. But I have heard of and seen many, many, many instances where the player or players or team, no, they did not get along with the coach. No, they probably didn't even like the coach. No, they probably didn't have any type of formal and functioning relationship outside of the parameters of work. But when it came down to it, knowing what was for the cause of the better good, they put aside whatever feelings they had towards that coach and not let it cloud their judgment to the point to where it affected their effort and how they played on the field. And I'm really, really, really hoping that even though these players say, I didn't like Patricia, he did this, I can listen, you're more than fair and free to criticize Patricia. I get it. He does not make it easy on himself. But if you're going to sit up here and say, because I didn't like Patricia, that's why I didn't play as hard, that to me is going to be is just as bad. It makes you just as guilty because it's letting you know, hey, I couldn't put petty things aside to put forth my best effort for the team, for the fans that have come and paid money to see us play. Now, hopefully I'm reading too much into that, and it didn't appear to be the case at all. But, it's quite interesting that if you hear one side of the story, but you don't hear both sides of the story. Again, if it turns out that, hey, you know what, these players were still giving it their all, it's just Patricia was just a complete boob and bungling all this, and Bob Quinn doesn't know what the hell he was doing. Fair point, absolutely. But I do feel some of this is a bit of a dog pile, and I just want to make sure that it's not a completely biased and prejudiced take from one side over the other. Get all the facts out, get all the information out that you need possible before making that decision. But no, Matt Patricia has not done wonders for himself in these past 2 years. I get that. Yes, I also get that players love Jim Caldwell. Great man, treated him well. I get that. But what culture is Glover Quinn trying to talk about that, we were changing the culture? What? You were changing the culture from going 6-10 to 8-8. That's changing the culture. Changing the culture is getting to the playoffs, winning playoff games, winning division titles, not coming in as second fiddle to the Packers every damn year. That's changing the culture. I don't know what he meant by that. I see the implements, the improvements that are being made in changing that culture, but guess what? Sue still ended up leaving. Calvin still ended up leaving. And this is before Patricia got here. Yeah. So, and this is before Patricia got there. So, I take a little bit of umbrage of what Clover said about changing the culture. No, the Lions as a whole, their whole legacy of failure, so to speak, that whole thing had its own aura and was well intact long before Patricia exasperated it.
Yep, that's true. So, and to top it all off in terms of changing the culture, winning their first ever Super Bowl, which is still yet to come. I know it's hard, but still, that's the objective, to win the Super Bowl. The Lions haven't won an NFL championship since 1957. And we both know that. We have to keep pointing that out to our audience. We got 10 minutes left. GM Bob Quinn by the way, thinks the players are 100% behind Matt Patricia. And speaking of Bob Quinn, he's taking calls from other teams about trading down from the third overall pick in the virtual 2020 NFL draft, which the Lions now, from what I hear, may have no chance to do so. But that was from CBS Sports NFL draft expert Ryan Wilson says they should do, but now they don't have a chance. Ryan Wilson pointed that out in a video on the CBS Sports mobile app. I watched it a little bit earlier tonight. The draft is tomorrow night at 8 on ESPN. I'm going to join 5 Points Vids and Urinating Tree on their special edition, NFL Draft edition of the Dumpster Fire. It's going to be like 4 minutes long. I'm probably going to be there only when the Lions go with number 3, either that or trade down with it. But I think the Lions are hanging on to number 3. But that being said, got less than 10 minutes to go. To the story vault we go. Jeff Moss of the Detroit Sports Rag. Are the Lions lying to you about DeAndre Levy? That's more Lionsy stuff right there. From September 17th of 2015. If you listen to delusional fans of the Detroit Lions, the reason the team's defense got lit up like a Christmas tree by Phillip Rivers and the San Diego Chargers on Sunday was the absence of linebacker DeAndre Levy. Many Kool-Aid drinking fans of this pathetic organization, one playoff win in 57 years at that point, argued that Levy's non-appearance due to a lingering hip injury was the difference between having the second-ranked defense in 2014 and giving up 483 offensive yards to Keenan Ivory Allen and company. Well, if a story out of Allen Park is true, the outstanding cover linebacker might be missing a lot of games this season. And if this rumor is accurate, it's not your garden variety hip injury. For weeks, the media has tried to pin down the organization regarding what exactly occurred for Levy to miss significant playing time. Those attempts have been met with stonewalling. Nobody knows if the injury happened during an exhibition game, during a practice, or exactly what went down at all. On September 9th, in an article posted on MLive.com, beat writer Justin Rogers labeled it as a mystery ailment. Oops. Fantasy sports injury guru Will Carroll stated there was concern that the injury could be internal. Will Carroll on Twitter at Injury Expert tweeted out on September 9th, 2015 at 4:29 p.m., quote, DeAndre Levy out this weekend. Concern is possible internal damage, could be extended absence, surgery, trying to manage symptoms, unquote. All of this is quite bizarre. Things only got stranger this afternoon when Moss was told by a source that the real reason why Levy is not playing is due to something occurred in Chile this offseason while the former Wisconsin standout, which is Levy, was on vacation. And no, it had nothing to do with his asinine walk on the wings of a biplane. Nope, we are being told that Levy contracted a parasite. Bingo. He contracted a parasite in Chile in his hip, and that is what is really keeping Levy off the field. Worse yet, the team's doctors have no clue when the linebacker will be able to return. If this source is accurate, the million-dollar question becomes this: is the parasite actually impacting Levy's hip? If the Lions are lying about the nature of Levy's injury when filing their weekly injury report with the NFL, they could expose themselves to hefty fines or even the forfeiture of a future draft pick. And can you imagine the horror if the team lost a selection and couldn't pick a gem like Titus Young or Michael LaShore? Are the Lions playing a semantical game? Are they refusing to answer questions of the when, how, and what of the injury because they don't want their fan base to know that their $37 million defensive stud is actually missing time because he ate a llama, a rattlesnake, or a frog south of the equator? Totally disgusting. Moss was told by one physician that a parasite could lead to infectious myositis, which could impact an athlete's hip area. Moss is waiting a further word from the sports medicine department of the Mayo Clinic to find out if it is possible for an infectious disease like a parasite to sideline any athletes to sideline an athlete months after contracting the organism, which is the parasite. Levy's off-season vacation habits have become legendary around these parts, and General Manager Martin Mayhew then had basically said he prefer his players to buy a pool at rehab at the Hard Rock in Las Vegas instead of walking on airplanes. mid-flight. Look, the possibility exists that someone is trying to make Moss look foolish with the leak. It's not the standard way Moss broke news, and it's not like then President Tom Luan, then head coach Jim Caldwell, or Bill Keenis are answering Moss's calls. But Moss had to give that person credit for coming up with the infectious disease angle. Only the Lions. So Ed, anything to add on that? I'll give you 2 minutes because we got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, basically, it's just a perfect example, Exhibit A, or Exhibit H, however you want to label it, of why the Lions are such a hilariously tragic franchise and organization. Stories like this, where only it seems it happens to the Lions, where a player can get a friggin' parasite in South America somewhere and have it affect his body so much you can't even have him on the field. And then the links, the gymnastics you have to go through to spin this story every which way from Sunday about, no, it wasn't this, it wasn't that. Like, come on, dude. Like, really? Just be honest. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but it's also funny. Own up to it. It would have gotten you some more fans, I think. It'll let them know, like, hey, you know what? Yeah, it's a messed up situation, but at least they take accountability for it. They own up to it. And you know what? They're trying to make some light of it. Obviously not light of the fact that your player is potentially sick, but, you know, say the situation is basically one of a billion fluke, treated as such, but hope he got his proper treatment. But no, he didn't do any of that. He completely tiptoed and sidestepped up around it the whole way. And it was just another comically bad reason as to why, you know, the Ford family has no business owning this team, period.
Yeah, that's true. That's why they should sell the team. Still, hopefully, to Jeff Bezos. He's the best option out there. Dan Gilbert, cross him off the list. We don't want him, of course. So that is our Story Vault segment. Now we go to the closing statement. We got 3 minutes left. I'll give you 1 minute, Ed, because I got a closing statement of my own. Ed, go.
Closing statement might be, to me, is Michigan. If you're at the University of Michigan, you have to learn from those around you and before you of what not to do with a horrible, potentially brewing, awful scandal. You're a school that has not been squeaky clean of your own in the past. You've had your own scandals, but this is a far different, ugly, different beast you had to deal with before. And the fact that you have been been paying attention to the other cases around you lets me to believe that, you know what, there is an underlying issue of where, you know, something may be going deeper here. So whatever it is, find it, root it out, expel it, because something like this has no place at all, whether it be at Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Baylor, Penn State. The list goes on, and it has no place at any school. It should not be happening at any school, period.
There you go. There's Ed's closing statement. My closing statement: the Lions will always be the Lions, no matter what they do. Even in tomorrow night's first day of the NFL draft, round 1, they could probably stick with Jeff Okudah at cornerback at number 3 overall. But other than that, we'll see how Matt Patricia treats him and the other players. Right now, Bob Quinn says they are 100% behind Matt Patricia. I may or may not believe him, but we'll see what happens later on this calendar year when the Lions kick out their season with or without fans. So, Ed Smith, excellent job as always. Thank you. I'll talk to you again next week on another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.
No problem. Take care and stay safe till then.
Yep. If there's any local, state, or national businesses that is interested in sponsoring the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Staples Network, please contact the network executive producer, Mark Mancini, by email at mancinisports@yahoo.com or our operations producer, Breck Smith, at breck@thestablesnetwork.com. Scour the Staples Network's website, Primetime with the Staples Network, and subscribe to its YouTube channel, like the Staples Network on Facebook, and follow it on Twitter and Periscope at Staples Network, and on Instagram at the Staples Network. Check out our show, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast website, the MichiganSportsTruthPodcast.com. Also, like its 2 Facebook pages of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast, one created by me at Michigan Sports Truth, and the other created by the Stables Network. Follow its Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_truth. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. We'll be back next Wednesday from 10 to 10:55 p.m. Eastern Time. Stay tuned for the Paradigm Shift coming up next on the Stables Network. Thanks very much for downloading and sharing. Remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Bon appetit. Hin with a Hein, we rest our case.
Stay safe, everyone.
Stay